The call that incorporates slowly with the Chancellor of Germany, he's involving more moderately, but again in a militarized tone, once again in an aggressive tone, applauded by others. But what are the people from Germany thinking about Great Britain? And what is the French people thinking about that? What is about the white dust? The future of Europe and the humanity is another war, another millions of people dead due to another war. No, I'm sure that Great Britons and French people and German people and European people in the streets will show with force sooner than later that they want to have peace, dialogue, understanding and agreements. Intensely, Silita, this long journey and day, Silvia Flores came dressed in the color of the battle of the victory. We went there. I want to salute the ambassador of Russia that accompanied us in these days, our friend who accompanied us in those intense days. You know that we never stop, never rest, coordinating here with Vice President Consul, Vice Presidents, governmental presidents. And I went there with delegations to hold bilateral meetings, and many of those bilateral meetings you knew about them, but many others you didn't know about them. But you will find out, you will see this. There was practically no time, and in this type of official tours, I like to walk around and get to know the city I visit. But Moscow was tremendous. We record a video one of these past nights, so you can see. You saw the second video we did. I don't know if we have them there. Do we have them? Welcome once again, Con Maduro Mas, and a big salute to mothers and grandmothers, to the homeland mothers, the profound mothers, all women. We were celebrating yesterday the Mother's Day in family and sharing this nice environment, a special environment with families. That special environment in a pretty Venezuela, in peace, that grows, that arises, that dreams, that builds, creates, and believes, and the profound country that is characterized by the love of the mother, that believes in everything, in any circumstances that they may live. There's always going to be the power of our mothers. And those who have not their mothers alive, we know that they are with us. They are hugging us and blessing us, that they are always accompanying us and never abandon us. Not they will. Those who have their mothers alive, take great care of them, protect them, and learn from your mothers. Yesterday was a pretty day that we celebrated in this corner of the world. We came from Russia, the big homeland, from Eurasia, historical motherland. Here we have been in a marvelous day in Russia, and all the great history, gigantic history, and the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the victory of the great victory day and the defeat of the Nazis, and over 30 state leaders, delegations from around the world of over 150 countries. We shared intense experience, not just with the Russian people who received us with love and applause and ovations, but not because I was there, not because Díaz-Canel was there, who we were together there. It was because of the example of our peoples, from Fidel Castro and Raúl and the Victory of Alba initiative. We found a Russian people full of optimism, of certainty. That Russian youth walking down the streets, joyful, easy, calm, confident in their future, the future that Russia provides to humanity. We are strengthened. We are full of power in the future. Strengthened because we could see in that great parade the great commemoration, in that great and with a great presence from worldwide leaders. We can see there's a new humanity born. No one can stop this new humanity, and this humanity will be more human. Program number 79th, Con Maduro Más, the only program from Venezuela and social medias. Let's see this tour in Russia and all news. Tuesday, in the framework of the commemoration of the 80th victory of the great homeland, the President of the Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, arrived at the airport international of Sheremetyevo of Moscow, where he was received by Russian authorities. This visit strengthens the historical ties between the countries in the defense of the peace. We came to commemorate with great sensitivity and conscience, historical conscience, the 80th anniversary of the great victory against Nazism. Our presence here is a ratification that the path of humanity must be peace, the respect of leaders. This has been the greatest victory in the face of the greatest threat, which was neo-fascism. Here we are here with the strength of Venezuela and the people of Russia and the peoples who were part of the Soviet Union that we are from. Wednesday, from the Kremlin, the head of state held a bilateral meeting with Vladimir Putin to ratify diplomatic relations in different areas of common interest and strengthen the future of cooperation and development. I would like to highlight that our relations are based in the agreement of strategic alliance and is a great base for our cooperation. Last year, there was an increase of 64% in the commercial exchange, which is a great number: energy, transportation, pharmaceutics, logistics, health, and of course the humanitarian component is also very important. We remember our great friend Hugo Chavez, who was a leader, a very impressive leader, not just for his country but also for Latin America. And he was also a great friend. Now you may continue his cause, and we wish you the best. I want to transmit the special feelings and admiration of the people of Venezuela. 8 years of the great victory of the war, because we live in a moment for these 80 years of our relations and the 80 years of that victory with a new strength for our integral relation of cooperation in all spheres and in the years that are to come. With the treaty that we are going to sign for 10 years, well, to see flourish the relations between the great Russia, which is today a great power, the main power of the world, and Venezuela from the global south, fighting with the ideal of Bolivar and Chavez. President Nicolás Maduro and his counterpart Vladimir Putin signed an agreement of cooperation and joint strategy. The treaty may be effective during 10 years, and they gave the highest level to the relationship of both countries, which turns Venezuela in the main leader, the main partner of the region. Later on, the leader met with the president of the Chechenian Republic with the objective of strengthening the bonds of relationship through a vision of a multipolar world. The President of the Republic on Thursday and his counterpart from Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, highlighted the alliance, the Bolivarian alliance, in the name of the member countries of the ALBA TCP. Through a wreath they placed in the Bolivar monument in Moscow, they highlighted that this visit, so special visit, we came here, the peoples from the ALBA TCP, to accompany the celebrations of the 80 years in which the Red Army from these heroic people led Europe and leading the Jewish people free the humanity. May all free peoples of the world prevail. Long live to Russia, ALBA, and Latin America. Later on, the leader held a meeting with the president of the Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, with the objective of widening the cooperation in fundamental areas like energy, commerce, finances, and security. After the president met with his counterpart from Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, to strengthen cooperation, the South-South cooperation. Venezuela and Burkina Faso highlighted the agreements between both nations, consolidating multilateralism. At the end of the agenda, in the third day at the Russian city, the leader held a meeting with the Patriarch of the Orthodox Church at the Cathedral of the Savior Christ, highlighting the mutual respect between the both inter-religions. Venezuela is making history. From the emblematic Red Square in Moscow, the President Nicolás Maduro and over 20 leaders of state accompanied President Vladimir Putin to the military parade for the 80 years of the victory against Nazism. The parade had the participation of over 10,000 soldiers who marched with pride as a symbol of victory over Nazism in 1945. The participation of the head of state, Nicolás Maduro, in this event reaffirms the bonds, the historical bonds between the people of Lenin and the people of Bolivar against imperialism and fascism. Later on, the President Nicolás Maduro met with the leader of the Asian giant, Xi Jinping, strengthening the cooperation links and fraternity between both nations. Caracas and Beijing reviewed the map of cooperation that has been strengthened, widened, strengthened, reaffirming the definition that they made to establish an association, strategic association, all time and at all levels. Today we are here at the gates of a multipolar world in which we have seen the arouse of new strengths, of new powers such as Russia, and also there is awakening like Latin America and the Caribbean. The great results that we are obtaining, we can multiply them, I'm sure. This meeting is going to be fruitful, and there are going to be new ways for us to keep moving together. I'm very happy to have this meeting with an old friend, President Maduro, this time in Moscow. I'm at your disposal. I'm ready to work with you to keep profounding the cooperation, the practical cooperation between both countries to impulse, to boost the relations between China and Venezuela. We are united in a new level to create, to defend the interest of both countries. On Saturday, to keep on with our agenda in Russia, President Nicolás Maduro traveled in train for the very first time from Moscow until Moskovsky Station in St. Petersburg, and he was received by the governor of that city, Alexander Beglov, who affirmed that both parties have great perspectives of cooperation in diverse areas. Also to pay homage to the martyrs of the Second World War, the head of state visited the cemetery and paid a homage and lay a wreath as a symbol of unity before the monument of the motherland. Also, the president signed the book of visits to express in name of the people of Venezuela his love and the commitment to freedom. President Nicolás Maduro keep traveling the city of St. Petersburg and also cathedrals of St. Peter and St. Paulo, where he visited the walls of the fortress. Russia and Venezuela are two cities and two peoples that are traveling together in the construction of a new world. The president also visited the governmental building of St. Petersburg, and later on he visited the place that conserves the story of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union and an ideological reference for the world. This year our peoples are celebrating a remarkable day, Data, 80 years from the beginning of the relations between both countries, which is symbolic and coincides with a victory against fascism. This is the Francisco Miranda, our leader in the independence of America, the first Venezuelan, the first Latin American who arrived to these lands. If there was something missing for us to keep showing our respect, is I want to thank all that Francisco Miranda did, all that Vladimir Putin also did, and also by Hugo Chavez and Venezuela. This was a journey, a day, a complete day. We felt we were at home. Because not just the world that we are seeing that has been globalized, but specifically the way in which we have built our relations with Russia and President Vladimir Putin, with the Russian people, which has been given marvelous results. There is an harmony, perfect harmony between Venezuela and Russia. Symphony and symphony, because it sounds also perfect, with trust, mutual work, learning, admiration, mutual admiration, respect, camaraderie, not just among the leaders, but among the governments, which it is present at a level where sometimes can see it, fully see it, but also at the level of the peoples. These past few days, as you may remember, these events that commemorate the 80 years of the great victory of humanity against Nazi fascism. Perhaps 80 years you can see a little bit far away from the moment we are living now, but this commemoration is remarkable because is in the moment in which there is a resurgence of fascism and Nazism currents in the world. The West in its decacy, in its rottenness, in its political and geopolitical, which, and its influence is hegemony, cultural deterioration and civilization, and a deterioration in their civilization simply pretends to erase and destroy with missiles of lies the great truth of the process, the heroic process that led the Red Army to the great victory against Nazism and fascism. Now, we need to mention that in this opportunity, the 80th anniversary of 2025, there was very few they could do to erase the great truth. There was not much to be done. It was very sad to see how a few leaders, Ernesto is doing his drawings. It's sad to see how some leaders of the world from this collective West, they went to celebrate the 80th anniversary in the capital, the world capital of Nazi fascism, where it is led by a pro-Nazi government, to say it in a simple way, because the government that is in Kyiv, in Ukraine, is a government that protects the currents of Nazism that led to Ukraine that destroyed the own people of Ukraine and the Soviet Union. Those leaders, they went to Ukraine calling for more war between white dusts. That has been a scandal. The addictions that destroy the minds of the own leaders of state that went there. It is a shame that the way they found, some leaders found, who were released from Nazism and fascism by the Red Army and by the Russian people and the peoples of the Soviet Union, they went there to call for more war, doing this very ashamed pay. They went there to talk about war and sanctions and violence, and they went there to talk about these topics, but being defeated by history, because the celebrations of the 80th anniversary, they couldn't stop this, not even with threats of attacks promoted by Zelensky against Moscow, but they couldn't do that. They were, the parade was heroic and historic. Those leaders failed because they went to Kyiv to call for more war. And what does the people of France think about this war that Macron is calling for? The people of France they agree to keep providing Ukraine with more arms, and are they willing to to promote a war against the people of Russia? And the Great Britain is the people of the Great Britain agree to promote a new war. And also the Chancellor of Germany is also using a militarized tone. The Chancellor of Germany, not such aggressively. But what does the people of Germany think about the Great Britain? And what is thinking the people of France? What is it about the white dust? What is about the deterioration of their moral The future of humanity is the future of humanity, another war with millions of people dead. I'm sure that is not the way. I'm sure that the people of Great Britain, from France and Germany and from all Europe are willing to prove on the streets that they want peace, dialogue, understanding, agreements. Silita, this great journey, here it is Celia Flores who came here dressed in accordance with a great victory. We went there, as you could see. I want to salute the ambassador of Russia, Sergei, our dear friend, who came with us, and also we never stopped, we never rest, coordinating here with the Vice President, governmental Vice Presidents, consuls. I took a delegation with me to be part of these bilateral delegations. There were many of them ones you knew about, and many of those you didn't knew about because of a strategy. But because of their works, you will know about this. Truly, practically there was no time, because whenever I come to this type of tour, of official visits, I like to walk around and get to know the city, but the cold from Moscow and the city of St. Petersburg was huge. We recorded a video one of these past nights, and of course you saw the second video because we were recording the first one. I don't know if we have those videos around. We do have that video. There is one that you haven't seen already, because you come out, and then I said to them, Ambassador, we were at Moscow and we went to walk down the streets for a walk, and there were 2 Celsius then, and we weren't that very much prepared for that cold, but I wanted to walk around the Red Square after the parade, and I said the Minister of Information, who has no rest, Ñañez, let's record a video to send a message to our people. The video was very pretty. The video ran very fast through social medias. I'm searching for it precisely. In TikTok, we won 4-3 yesterday to the Real Madrid, and we are very close to win the league. That video went around social medias. Here it is. Has 2.4 million views on TikTok, over 45. This is the video with a message. We spoke from the heart, always. We need to thank God from the heart. In that moment, we were very emotional, and I told Celia, let's record a video. Ambassador, it is one of the great fortunes, positive aspects of the interconnectivity we have in the world through social media. You may see this. We walk around from Moscow. The steps are very much alive. This was a definitive video. The day there is a lack of common space. We are very few hours away from the end of the day to get advantage of all the opportunities Venezuela is going to see, to experience. On Wednesday we had a long work day, working day with the president of the Russian Federation. I think that the most intense and extended working day I have ever had as a president, or I have seen as a president in Russia with the President Vladimir Putin. We were at the Kremlin, which is an architecture greatness that proves the path of times through different eras. The Kremlin represents the large era of the construction of the first Russia, to call it by some name. The Russia of the Tsars that had several moments from its foundations in Kyiv, the White Russian, as they were called during the 3rd century, and after its refoundation, the battles and the extension of the strength of Ivan the Terrible, so-called Ivan the Terrible, because of the way he faced the war and his capacity, his war capacity and political capacity, and the refoundation of St. Petersburg of Russia in 1703. We also visited St. Petersburg, and also the great Soviet Revolution, and afterwards the rebirth of Russia, the Kremlin. There I am, arriving at the Kremlin, at the gates of the Kremlin, of the left side of the building, walking up the stairs. It is marvelous. When I'm there, walking around, arriving, I have the humble people arriving with me. If Maduro is there at the Kremlin, the people of Venezuela is also with me. They're the humble people of Venezuela, receiving the honors, the attentions. There we were to hold a bilateral meeting on Wednesday, May 7th, to hold a bilateral meeting among Russia and Venezuela. We held a meeting first, a private meeting, where we reviewed precisely, this is the private meeting where we were revising in a small fraction all the topics of cooperation, of the cooperation in the commercial field. We are going to work with Russia in a new agreement of cooperation, commercial cooperation, to open up the gates of our path, our commercial path towards between Russia and Venezuela. Although we have grown in our commercial exchange, we have a huge world to see. Russia is a powerful market, and it's a country that produces products of great quality. It has a great horizon to work together. We were also reviewing our energy cooperation that is better than ever, Ambassador. Our cooperation and our investments in oil and gas, the transfer of technology of Russia is a power of gas, the main leading in gas production and oil production, is at the top two, between the two powerful powers of oil powers of the world. Our investment in energy is going better than ever, and this motivates me because of several issues, several aspects. It was trembling, but it has renovated itself, and this is a very important issue. The Intergovernmental Commission of High Commission founded by Commander Hugo Chavez and Vladimir Putin on December of 2001. We are not talking about yesterday. We are talking about a history. 2001, almost 24 years building a path together. First with Chavez and also today with me. And also I have the spirit of Chavez in me, because I named the lady Delcy Rodriguez on the Venezuelan part. You know how methodic and scientific she is. And on Russian part, President Putin named Sherlyshenko vice president, and Delcy, they ordered the intergovernmental commission between both peoples which are working in time just as a clock. We were reviewing the technical, and military cooperation, which is going well. We are sharing our new experiences and new technologies that there are in the world. President Vladimir Putin was amazed when I told him the great changes we have made in the Bolivarian armed forces, when I spoke about the military forces of the Republic and he also shared some gifts, and he also gave me this gift. I wasn't able to show it before. When the exchange came on the occasion of the anniversary, he said, Nicolás. Nicolás is a Russian name, which means the man who leads the people to victory. And he said, I'm going to give you a gift, a very dear gift for Russia, an arm made by the Soviets of the Leningrad of the Great War of the homeland. When I went to St. Petersburg, which was Leningrad, years earlier, officials, men and women from the military field, how the people saved the people and how they were capable of building popular industries for the creation of this very gift, a missile from the Great War of the homeland, a combat missile built by militias of the people of Russia, with fuselage, with its charger. What did you say there? Help me out here. With the charger of the missile, which is one of the first creations of the people of Russia in the middle of the combat. It's very heavy. They do very much advanced elements from a technological point. It is one of the most advanced military industries in the world, if not the most. China and Russia are hand to hand in this department, and also the United States. Here it is, you can see. No one saw this before, not even members of the delegation. I kept this in secret. It came with a manual from the Soviet Union times. Ernesto, you didn't come with me. You would enjoy this trip so much. I'm very sorry for that. It also came with propaganda from that era, Soviet propaganda. Here I only understand Moscow, right behind of the paper. These were arms of the era made by the Red Army and the militia, the popular militia. They all together saved humanity. They all together and united saved humanity. I'm very thankful for this gift, for this detail. Wow. Also came, cantimplora is the name in Spanish, used by militarists. And also, how do you call this? And also a trushka, translated as a glass to warm water during war times, and tea whenever they may do that. Soup. There was also a logistic that was created by the Red Army. I was also speaking a lot with Vladimir Padrino and officials who accompanied me. It is a great learning of how to build a logistic on the field, on the battlefield. It is also comparing it to other war times in humanity, like in compare with the violence and the class struggle. I didn't say this, that was said by Karl Marx. And the war has been the instrument of the history. Today, in 21st century, we have a culture of peace, and the instrument of the birth of the understanding is dialogue, struggle of the project. The cowards in this world, cowards are not respected by anyone in this world. You may find your own conclusions, you cowards, and also the violent people. This beautiful gift. Ambassador, what does this letter said? This seems like an order of operation. Let us know, Ambassador. It is signed, the signing of the act of capitulation of the German forces. It is a copy, of course. Look at that. This has the weight of that capitulation and defeat, the defeat in the face of Antonio José de Sucre in 1924 in the Ayacucho field. Here is the weight, the proof that the Nazi troops were really ripped apart and they surrender before the Red Army. There should be the signing of Mariscal Schutkov. It is there. And also the commander of the Germany forces. There are 4 signatures. Well, it is a gift for you. President Putin gave it to me, and it's a detail that are very remarkable details. He offered me this gift also, this we could do this, a resemble of this emblematic picture. In the meeting with President Putin that lasted 2 hours and a half, we had 3 moments, 3 special moments. We spoke about all these topics: commercial, energy cooperation, military development. Also, we spoke about the cooperation of high technology, satellite technologies, space technology, what you say, we are going to multiply the clonal system in Venezuela from north to south, from east to west. We were talking about cooperation in education, culture. You know, Russia is one of the icons of culture, of worldwide culture, from 400 or 500 years ago. And that we had another moment, a second moment, that was the meeting between delegations. We could listen minister by minister of the government of Russia and also minister by minister of the Venezuelan government. We were shaping the plan of interconnectivity, aerial interconnectivity between Russia and Venezuela, because we need to reach the interconnectivity on a daily basis with flights from Russia to Venezuela and from Venezuela to Russia. That is moving forward. We expect that it also increases and tourism increases as well. It is very beautiful, all the tourist opportunities, and also very successful opportunity because Russian tourism can pay with his MIR card that is also being used already in Venezuela, which is a method of payment, in this case between Russia and Venezuela. And in Venezuela, the people of Venezuela appreciates and wants the tourism from Russia, and also the Russian tourist leaves the country speaking wonders about Venezuela and what they find in Venezuela, in the San Agustin neighborhood and many other corners of the city and the country. And then we move on to the signing of a document that 24 years later is a new beginning. A new beginning. Maybe because due to so many news going around, we haven't been able to explain this, but Russia and Venezuela, we have signed a treaty of high level of cooperation, of strategic cooperation between both countries. The first treaty of high level, of a high strategic level that we can see we sign and crowns 24 years of construction in all the areas, in all the fields of our work, our joint work. All opens up. It is a treaty of very high level, never seen before in the relations between Russia and Venezuela. So, I can say that these days, these past few days, this day of bilateral meetings of past May 7th marks a new beginning of higher level, strategic level between Russia and Venezuela, between the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and President Nicolás Maduro Moros. And it's barely starting. We are just starting, beginning this process. That was Wednesday. On that same Wednesday, I held several meetings with Chechenia's country leader, a young man that you met through social networks, a young man, a warrior from the great inheritance of Chechenian warriors. I was very much impressed because I told to him, I think I have met you before from another life. I feel like I've met you. We hug each other. We spoke about a group of topics that they are interested about in Venezuela. And also we agreed a plan. The next visit I go there, he invited me to go to Chechnya. I want to get to know the history of Chechnya, the Chechenia's warriors, giants in their action capacity that support decisively President Vladimir Putin. He spoke to me with great pride about President Vladimir Putin. When he spoke about President Putin, I could see the light of a young man when he met Commander Chavez, the same empathy. So we were talking about, it was a amicable and a long conversation, very joyful, amicable. And on that same Wednesday, in the middle of that heavy cold that hit Moscow, that same Wednesday, I held a meeting, a very beautiful meeting from Chechnya. We traveled precisely to Africa. And I held a meeting with a leader, a young leader from Africa, Captain Ibrahim Traore. Also a head of government from Burkina Faso. We were talking about the history of Africa. I said to him how Commander Hugo Chavez taught us to how to value Africa, how Chavez told us about Mother Africa, and how we felt Africa as our motherland. And we were talking about peace, development, cooperation, future. We were speaking about brotherness and peoples, and also how the Sahel alliance between Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and all the West Africa, it is going through an awakening, marvelous awakening of justice. And this youth, this very young man, is the youth of hope. He's portraying the youth of hope that Western imperialists left Africa alone. May they not get their hands, they should get their hands off Africa. There are 500 years, as Bolivar said here in Caracas, 500 years of looting are not enough. 500 years of slavery is not enough. The West should get their hands off Africa. That's what we said to Captain. And I saw in his eyes the eyes of a brother. Celia was a witness because he was arriving at Moscow, ambassador. And I arrived at the site of the meeting before he did. And as I was a little bit anxious, I walked around the side of the meeting. There were some windows, and then a door opened, and he was the one entering. And what did we do? We hugged, in a hug that was like a centuries-old, long-awaited meeting between Africa and one of his dearest sons, Venezuela. We are Venezuela. We are truly, so you can see, when we were minutes, hours, and to that day to reunite with so many leaders that went there. On Thursday, May 8th, we also had a very intense day. We traveled through a boulevard, immense park that we asked the mayor of Moscow, since that park has no name, and since that there is where the great statue of Simon Bolivar is inaugurated from last year, we asked the mayor of Moscow if that park could receive the name of our liberator Simon Bolivar at the center of Moscow. It was very beautiful, and all of you who like to travel the world, Moscow is very beautiful, and they love Venezuelans. And if Moscow is beautiful, you may go crazy in St. Petersburg because of the beauty of that city. Please bring me the painting that it was gifted to me in St. Petersburg. We met afterwards with the president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel. We met there to pay homage to Liberator Simon Bolivar. Díaz-Canel was very amazed by the statue of Simon Bolivar in Moscow. We have a strong relationship of friendship. I made a mistake, that was staying when we were singing the anthem of Venezuela and Russia, in that moment I was freezing. It was freezing. There were 3 Celsius in Moscow, but the thermal sensation was the perhaps 1 Celsius. I was so freezing. I was freezing at that moment. And there I asked for the assistance. And I was seeing at the assistance for them to bring me a jacket or something. Then I put a jacket on and we pay homage. We mention a few words how emotional it was to arrive at Moscow, a place of so many historical events, and to accompany my brother Miguel Díaz-Canel. And Martí was the greatest Bolivarian from the 19th century, but also I think he was from all centuries. And the other great Bolivarian was Fidel Castro. Of this strength, Latin American strength, Fidel was also a son of José Martí and a great son of Bolívar. Who was Hugo Rafael Chávez? There we were, and I'm very thankful for the mayor of Caracas, because that piece of art was from her. Who accompanied us? Young men, students, that Venezuela has been studying at the greatest universities of Moscow. Look at how beautiful this looks, Celia. How beautiful this is, Celia. We have a jet lag, a little bit of jet lag. How beautiful to share with them, to take photos, selfies, videos, to hug each other. We saw that brilliant face. All of them speak Russian fluently. They are achieving a greatest feat. They said, "Thank you, President." When we graduate, we want to come back to Venezuela to help Venezuela to keep moving forward. Then the ambassador was there, and Russia opened their arms, and Russian president offered me 200 new scholarships for Venezuelan students to study in Moscow. And I'm very sure if I ask for more scholarships, Russia will give us, because Russian universities are open for Venezuelans and young students from Venezuela. You should pursue a master's degree, a scholarship degree, postgraduate degree, and specializations in all fields in Russia. They suggested careers on artificial intelligence, and I said I could invite the specialists from Russia in artificial intelligence to come to Venezuelan universities to offer lectures for students. We have a career, a university career, which is specialized in artificial intelligence. Afterwards, we held a meeting, a bilateral meeting with President Miguel Díaz-Canel, and we lost no time in reviewing mutual interests topics. We decided to profound relations, cultural relations, to the maximum level. All that is dance, theater, movies, cinema, music. I was telling him about the great mission Viva Venezuela, mi patria querida, and we agreed that this great mission goes and travels to Cuba to perform the permanent actions, not every year, not once in a year. It is not about that. We keep doing this, but we need to do this on a daily basis, as we were in some time in which the cultural exchange was flourishing, and daily as well. That's one of the topics we spoke about, among others. Then I held a meeting with an important partner from the OPEC Plus, from an important country, from Central Asia, with a president that precisely that we also were emailing each other. He was one of the first countries that congratulated me for my triumph on July 28th. I was in Kazakhstan after I was invited, as I am now member country, representing the movement during a summit of the organization of the community of the Islamic community. There I was with the President President Tokayev. He is a very friendly person. He admires the Venezuelan people and our struggle. I was very impressed because he knows lots of details about Venezuela and our struggle. We were working together to strengthen our political relation and economic relation and our alliance in our society under the framework of the OPEC Plus. We were talking about the possibility to have a stronger will in order to the OPEC Plus to keep leading the stability of the oil topics in the oil market. I also spoke about this with President Vladimir Putin to reach an oil stability in the world market. The president of Kazakhstan also, they were open a huge number of possibilities, of work possibilities, and he was very motivated for Venezuela and Kazakhstan to develop a wide agenda of cooperation and prosperity, joint prosperity. We mentioned the possibility of meet again, and he said that he will come to Venezuela whenever he may get a chance, and I promised to pay a visit to Kazakhstan and go there to pay an agenda, which is an amazing country. All of those countries that were part of the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union dissolved on 1991, on December 1991, a new group of countries were born at the moment. Kazakhstan has a great bond with the Russian Federation, and all of those countries achieved to go through their own development model. When you see, and I said this many times before and I like to repeat it, in this reputation, many people get to listen to this. They achieved their own way and path, and he congratulated me because Venezuela has kicked off its own way in its own path. They managed to get those countries to a developing way that they never had before. During the Soviet Union era, they achieved a great advance in technology and education spheres. But all of those countries that formed the Soviet Union from the South region, from an Islamic belief, And also Orthodox beliefs, with a 40% of the population, with a Christian Orthodox religion, they have managed to build a development, an impressive development. And from that meeting, something came up, because immediately we went to reach a compromise, to visit Patriarch of the Orthodox Church of Moscow and whole Russia, the Patriarch of 140 million Christians, Orthodox Christians, brothers and sisters of ours, the Patriarch Kirill. I met him before because he came to visit Commander Chavez, and he remembers that visit with exact details. And even one of the priests remembered how he was the foreign minister of affairs at the moment and how he was the one who received him. But we didn't saw each other in a while since then, and I always have, as a norm, a spiritual encounter with the countries. And I visited at a monastery that has several centuries, very beautiful, because the architecture, the aesthetic, the art of Russia, and especially of the Orthodox Church, is very beautiful. And we were there, we were speaking, we walk around the place. And a curious fact, the Patriarch Kirill met with Pope Francis in Havana. That was the first encounter from the Christian schisma, from the third encounter that happened between Patriarch from the Orthodox Church and a Pope from the Catholic Church. It was the first meeting, because in Western, the Church, the Post-Apostolic and Rome Church, led the Western part of the world, but the other side of the world is led by the Patriarch, and it had its base in Istanbul when it was Constantinople. And the Patriarch met Pope Francis in Havana. Patriarch and me, during a long talk, we would like to spend many more hours speaking together, but we had a compromise with President Putin. These are passionate topics, the topics of the faith, of Christ, of society, of values, of peace, topics of family, children, the threats of the world against the minds and cultures of the world. And he was talking to me about the era of the SARS, of the Soviet Union, and the Putin era. And you learn so much from him and from the culture, the world culture, the era we have managed to live. But we were face to face, and we were speaking about Pope Francis. He reviewed and recalled their dialogue, and I said that was amazing. And at the same moment that we met and we spoke, at the same moment in which the Vatican elected a new pope, and about the priest who arrived to the Vatican as a pope. He was born in the US, but he was formed in Peru among the people and the poor people of Peru. And at the same moment in which the Vatican announced Habemus Papam, I was speaking to the Patriarch in Russia, and we were speaking about Pope Francis, because when I speak about Pope Francis, I don't speak about a late pope. I speak about a pope who is very much alive, because Pope Francis stayed among us. He is in my heart. He is in the heart of all the Christian people of the world. And I wanted to share this story with you. Then we went to take dinner that offered marvelous spectacle, a cultural show at the Kremlin, interactive with techniques of video mapping, doing giving a panorama of the greatest hits, greatest moments of the with artists that were shooting men and women, and we were sharing that. And afterwards there was a dinner, and in that dinner President Putin sit next to President Xi Jinping, and I was also next. I was next to President Putin and President Xi Jinping, and we were speaking. We spoke for over an hour during that dinner, and we spoke about everything. And at that moment, the name of the new Pope came up, because there were such much speculations that they were said to choose Parolin. And as we said in Venezuela, in an era in which all the quinielas went down, and they choose a pope from the people. And I salute Cardinal Parolin, but cardinals choose a pope that comes from the people. And I was speaking to President Xi Jinping about a lot of topics from Latin America, China, from the commercial war, trade war imposed by the US. We were speaking about the economic future, about our countries, the humanity, and many other topics. And at that moment, the name of the Pope came up. And at that moment, I was informed of who the new Pope was. And I said to Xi Jinping, there is a new Pope. And he asked me, who is it? And I show a picture of him to President Xi Jinping. And I said to him, I show him a picture of the new Pope. And what do you know about him? And I said, I've been told friends of mine who were at the conclave, they sent several messages to me, and they said, he is a good man. He was born in Chicago, but all his priest career was developed among the people, and he was of great confidence of Pope Francis. And President Xi Jinping spoke to me very well about Pope Francis. As you know, there is a conflict, a historical conflict between the state of the Popular Republic of China and the state of the Vatican, but he was very dearly and respectful, Xi Jinping, speaking about Pope Francis. That's how the things go, as you may see. Habemos Papa. That's correct. The Lions. Pope Leo XIV. The May 9th arrived, the great day. Very early we were there. It was Friday, last Friday, Friday 9th. 80 years of the defeat of the Nazi army of Adolf Hitler and all of his accomplices, because the Soviet Union not only were invaded by the Nazis of Germany, they were also invaded by their allies. We received the corresponding honors. We salute President Putin. I like to share all of these details with you. This building of the Kremlin, I didn't know about this. Kremlin is a compound of buildings with an architecture of centuries old in a perfect restoration and preservation. It is a beautiful space. It was very cold that morning. There is General-in-Chief of the protocol of the Kremlin, very dearly, very joyful, always is in a smile. I invited him as well to visit us in Venezuela. There we were received by President Putin. And then we went to a living room. Would you like a coffee, Celita? You may give my guests a coffee. Venezuelan coffee is very famous. May all coffee workers and producers, Russians, all they ask is Venezuelan coffee. Coffee is all they want. Well, we were there in the living room, in that living room, which is very beautiful. That space is monumental in the Kremlin. When we came there, there were all presidents gathered there. We hugged each other. You get advantage of it, and then you make some lobby with the Communist Party of Vietnam. For example, I met with him. We met for the very first time there, and we hugged each other as well. And the very first thing he said, "Maduro, you need to visit me to Vietnam." And I said, "Of course. Maduro, you need to come to Vietnam." We took pictures of us. Then the president of Serbia arrived. Then the president of Guinea-Bissau, Zimbabwe, among others, arrived at the moment. Also the president of Mongolia. We did a selfie, and he published it in the Mongolian official account. And one of them spoke to me about Venezuela, almost like it almost spoke to me about the communal circuits and the projects and how many projects were approved. This is I mentioned this as an example. We were loved. I felt the admiration of all the 25 states, head of states who went there, greeted me and hugged me with an admiration expression. When you see this reaction, you say everything we have done has worth it. Venezuela is an example of resistance and moral in the world. We arrived at the parade. The Red Square was full. I only thought 80 years ago, one day like this, there was a historical event, unique event in the history of the world. The Red Army of the Soviet Union, these people of Russia, gave 27 million of lives to save humanity. These people with their sacrifice saved humanity, and some people tried to erase the memory of the immense sacrifice they did. 27 million soldiers of human beings, almost half in a direct combat, defending their land or moving towards the victory, and the other half died out of cold and hunger. This was a unique moment in history, to face the most powerful machinery of the world, military war machine in the world, and defeated it. It was not the victory of a single soldier, but a united moral and cultural victory, colossal victory of humanity. Because the Red Army was entered in Berlin, we were all entered in Berlin with them. There we were, on the very first line, near President Putin. And what I can say, that was very, very cold. A tremendous cold. It was a parade, an imponent parade, in which all the countries that form the Soviet Union displayed a representation, including a delegation from China, from the socialist country of Vietnam, and I was sit next to the president of Vietnam, and he was telling me all the details that were happening at the parade. I was amazed. A spectacular sky. It was very cold, but it was so beautiful. I raised a prayer to say thank you, God, and thank you, life, for allowing me to live a moment like this, a unique moment, the 80th anniversary of the victory of the great homeland, of the Soviet Union, of the Red Army, and the whole humanity against Nazism and fascism, against Nazi fascism. There we were, and then we walked around the Red Square to pay homage to the tomb, the historical tomb of the unknown soldier. And we were so surprised by the Russian people, because Diaz-Canel and I were walking around, and I was very attentive to Celia, and we were walking, and and then we were surprised by a multitude of people shouting, "Long live Venezuela, long live Cuba," and I felt so amazed, and I got very emotional, because you can see the energy in the middle of that very cold. You can see the energy with which the Russian people said goodbye to us in the Red Square during an event for the 80th anniversary of the victory against fascism. You can see there Diaz-Canel and I saluting the people, and I respected protocol. As I did, I respected the protocol, but really my intentions were to go there and hug the people, but you couldn't break the rule and the protocol. Sometimes you may be this brave, but at this moment it was not a good idea to break the protocol. Also, there were also leaders from all over the world with us. We pay homage and pay our homage and lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Very sentimental. That moment was very emotional. We were on the first row with red roses on our hands, next to President Putin, Xi Jinping, Lukashenko, and presidents of all the republics that form the Soviet Union, the independent republics today, presidents from over 27 countries. It was marvelous. It was a unique moment that signified like a worldwide summit. The impact that this moment and this event had in the public opinion, the worldwide public opinion, is got out of sight. And this event ratified the great leadership of the superpower of Russia and of the President Vladimir Putin. No place for doubts. He is a president that is making history in the construction of a humanity to say this on the words of President Xi Jinping, of a shared future, of a multipolar world. I would like to have your opinion, Ambassador, because we were together in these past days, and it was very marvelous. Please offer your considerations. Thank you very much, President Maduro. It was a historical moment when the leaders, the progressive leaders came, the true friends came to share with us, with Russia, with the heirs of the Soviet Union, with the citizens of Russia, this great massive event, this great parade of a very huge pride for our ancestors, a memory of so many victims that gave their lives to the fight against fascism and Nazi fascism. The true leaders of the world that were part of this moment, you among them. For me as an ambassador here in Venezuela, it was a great pride, a great honor to see you there with your first combatant, Lady Cilia Flores. I accompanied your visit in Moscow, and it was a great joy. Thank you very much for going there. President, it was a historical moment, not just for our relations, our bilateral relations, because of the treaty that was signed, that marked a new step, a new phase among our peoples, but also because it coincided with this great data, with the 80th anniversary of the Great Victory Day. This was no coincidence. I'm very sure we will always prevail together. Thank you, President. We will prevail together. Ernesto Villegas, you can see, I saw a lot of materials that you publish on your social medias, because Ernesto has become the great expert, national expert of the topics of Nazi fascism, also from the world, because he is descent from Croatia, which was taken by the Nazis for many years and was declared an independent republic under Nazi leadership by Hitler. But thanks to the people from Yugoslavia and the Red Army who entered the Red Army entered and liberated those peoples. And my very much respect for the President Vucic. I admire him, and he loves us very much as well. How do you observe as an expert in Nazi fascism, and after spending many years studying this issue, how do you think this parallel meeting among the leaders of France, Great Britain and Germany in Kyiv, because France, who was also very dependent from London, urged Hitler to destroy the Soviet Union and to enter the Soviet Union. And when France surrendered to the Nazi Germany, London, when Winston Churchill had to call Stalin and to make an alliance right after the Germans took France. And afterwards, they waited to see if Hitler arrived to Moscow. And when the counter-offensive of the Red Army came and liberated Europe, then they decided to disembark in Normandy, and try to help a little. I need to tell you something that I was told. What is your appreciation, Ernesto, in this topic? President, thank you for your introduction. I think it failed. The attempt to twist the historical truth, it failed. The imponent demonstration that there was from Moscow towards it has swept away and turned into dust the other narrative, the other dusty narrative of a cruel and in the face of the truth of the participation of the Soviet Union, of the people from the Soviet Union, and the victory against fascism, and also as the great triumph of the Red Army. That doesn't mean that there were an important contribution from other peoples of the world that also faced Nazism, but the attempt to erase the main leader, the main actor in this huge victory, it was a fail. And there is a detail. That is that today, in the past few days, in the New World of Israel, there was an article in which a Jewish writer claims the participation of the Russian Jewish in this great victory against Nazism. Men, women, soldiers who were Jewish and Soviets who participated in this victory of the Red Army and the Russian people. I was also amazed by a photograph of officials from the Red Army with their condecorations in Israel, because they were Jewish who emigrated to Russia, who emigrated to Israel after the great victory. The story that is imposed is the recognition of the historical truth, because they were, for example, if it weren't that the case, they were also demanding the recognition in the Normandy disembark. They are also failing in the face of so many leaders that took part in this parade held in Russia. Let's say that the leaders went to Moscow. There was a diversity from 25 countries that attended, that reflect a diversity that many news outlets around the world don't want to show for a reason. This new humanity that is showing itself beyond unilateralism from the US and its Western allies. The world is very much more diverse than what Hollywood presents at ourselves. It is much more bigger than what this international media is trying to erase and not to recognize. The Red Army is, after that ratification, this rhetoric is in synchrony with a resurge, an upsurge of fascism throughout the world. Of this movement, it is a way that a way that was installed in the world by Hitler. These leaders are supremacism, extremism that Venezuela suffers and Venezuelan people suffer, has heirs of families with those who unfortunately suffered the Europe and the Jewish people, and the same pain that suffers today the Palestinian people now, or those migrants who have no money to and now we are seeing a xenophobia but against those people who have no money. Also, the economic power that represents some citizens of the world, but the poor people, when they get a phase of a Latin American phase, of a Gitano phase, of Arab phase, of immigrant from Asia, then they receive a treatment like if they were subhumans, and that's what we are facing with our connationals. Supremacism leads inevitably to the lack of control, the lack that lived Europe 80 years ago, that is also reviving today, unfortunately, that are gaining points in the world, but they are led to failure. This philosophy and this celebration against fascism is bad news for neo-fascism, for supremacists around the world. Around the corner, any supremacist is going to face the answer of the human quality that characterizes the answer at the moment against the Hitler movement and also Italian fascist Italy. That mobilization that we saw the parade in Moscow, but also there were mobilizations, military mobilizations in 50 cities in Russia, and the threats that were made by Zelensky to bomb Russia, to loot Russia, it was like an act of revenge against the people of Russia. Zelensky said that he said, we are not going to let you celebrate, we are going to bomb you. And like the Russian government said, they tried to perform over 5,000 attacks, but Russia was at peace. Russia is always aware. I can say some things, but there were over 5,000 attempts, and the military parade was accompanied by the parade of the people, with a immortal memory of those who lost a family member in the great war of the homeland. It was impressive the way in which Russia is standing, shining, and the power that represents today Russia for the good and for the world. You mentioned the meeting with the Patriarch of and Pope Francis. It is very interesting because precisely one of the aspects of the Second World War that was very little shown throughout the world was the fact that the intolerance, religious intolerance, that it was inoculated in the peoples of the former Yugoslavia. There were some horrendous stories that show, that speak about children, that the children were forced to persignate, to pray, but because Catholics persignate themselves from the right to the left, but Orthodox persignate themselves from left to right, and that was used to kill people and children during the Nazi times. In St. Petersburg, Leningrad, people were standing, as you are going to see, during a religious act, persignating from the right to the left, because you can pray During the Nazi era, the way in which you pray could define if you live or die. Serbians, the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church went right through the border between Yugoslavia and Bosnia and all that territory. And in that, and that was something so horrendous that we saw, for example, in the 90s with the Balkans. Cleansing, ethnic cleansing had very much to do with that seed of intolerance. On May 9th, in the evening, we held a bilateral meeting, and it was the first time we held a bilateral meeting between Xi Jinping and President Nicolás Maduro. We met and held a bilateral meeting in Moscow during a meeting, an extraordinary meeting, because that meeting, I have to say this, for those who are interested in this, we already held talks during dinner on the previous day, but this was the official meeting between the high delegations of the Chinese Republic and the highest delegation of Venezuela. This meeting came to seal the agreement, the strategic agreement in the framework of the association, the strategic association for all moments, and it was to Delcy Rodriguez spoke about this recently, and President Xi Jinping thanked me the visit of the Vice President, and several ministers were there. For example, the Minister of Reform, Commerce, Wang Yi, also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kai Kui from the Bureau, the Politic Bureau, also President Xi Jinping. It was extraordinary. As you could see, the public manifestation, and you see my words. But after the cameras were turned off, all that you could see, it was affection, advances. We share in detail the vision of this joint developing relationship in detail. Also, the interest of President Xi Jinping, and also the Chinese Revolution, in the great achievements and agreements that we took in these areas, technology, development, commerce. We are also discussing a commercial agreement at the highest level with China as well, and also with Russia, as I mentioned. We have sealed a great phase. He thanked me that in the face of all the world circumstances, the Vice President came for over a week, and when he found out that I was going to the parade and the celebrations invited by President Putin, he immediately sent me a message to hold a bilateral meeting, and that's what happened. Look at that symbol on that May 9th that is going to prevail. 5 p.m. local time, Moscow time. President Xi Jinping, President Nicolás Maduro, Popular Republic of Venezuela. We sealed agreements, iron agreements, to move forward with a great triumph. This was a great victory in all the agreements which reached and those that are to come. And I said this to him. We were fortunate to make an agreement earlier because we did a strategic association for all times, and that's what we are showing. We are friends, we are loyal, close, we are brothers. As I said to him, we consider the Popular Republic of China as our brothers, and that is how we are going to keep moving forward. Afterwards, we share with the Chinese community in a very beautiful park that President Xi Jinping said something important to me. President Putin also said this to me during a private meeting. He said, we want to help the development of the 7 transformation plans that Venezuela has. We think it is remarkable continent, and China is incorporating itself to support Venezuela in the 7 transformation plan. The National Assembly is going to approve this in the upcoming days. And President Putin also said in private, he said, it is very interesting, the 7 transformation plan. Russia wants to support its success. We can say that this is a kind of relationship that the world must have, that Venezuela is developing with a superpower, a project of mutual benefit, collaboration of peace, understanding, of intercultural dialogue, intercultural and interpolitical dialogue. No superpower in 12,000 years has demonstrated what China and Russia are demonstrating today as a superpower that has come to change the world, and the world be a space for collaboration and peace, to guarantee the right to the future, including for us and including for the smaller countries of the world. A superpower like the US can pretend that they are supremacists, that they are worthy more than the rest of the world, and the whole world needs to bend the knee in the face of the US. That is not what we are going to do. We will never do that. Venezuela will always stand firm. If the imperialist US keeps insisting on their intentions to harm Venezuela, we will always be ready for the combat in the field that needs to be done. They are lions of paper, imperialism of a lion of paper. You're going to see this on Saturday, May 10th, with a cold of 2 Celsius degrees. At 5 a.m., we were at the station of the Moscow train. I never did this before in my life, because I like to travel in this way of transportation, because you can see a country from the inside. And these images are from when we arrived at St. Petersburg. We get to the train, and I insist in trying to be a common citizen whenever I arrive here in Venezuela or abroad. Security needs to take care of me, but the Russian security was very attentive. We arrived at the train station, and we walked the most easy that we did, and people was amazed when they saw us getting inside the train. And then I came to say hi to the passengers, and they all asked for selfies with me. And they posted those photos on social media that went viral in Russia. Also, I saluted the commander of the train. It was cloudy and cold, and we passed by a lake, and we saw the lake that provides Moscow with water, and we were heading to St. Petersburg. I recommend tourists to take this train. You can see the profound Russia, the beauty of the profound Russia. We arrived at St. Petersburg over 9 a.m. local time. St. Petersburg is a little bit cooler than Moscow because it is to the north of the country. And this is the director of international relations. We made friends with him. And St. Petersburg was, as you know, is a region that was Leningrad, that gave birth to Pete the Great, and gave birth to Lenin and also to Vladimir Putin. This is a great friend of mine. He is relentless. He has 3 times more energy than we have. There we were eating bread. Is the way to receive us with affection to a brother that came from afar, and we follow a busy agenda. The city is beautiful, and we were meeting the Smolny Palace, where the first Soviet of St. Petersburg lived. We went to the Lenin office where he wrote the Constitution, and I didn't know this even when I read a lot about the history. Lenin wrote the Constitution, and the one that was later on approved by the Soviets, with the farm and the working class approved, and also along with the soldiers, and this was never repeated before and after. They wanted to take the sky, and they did so. They made a revolution that changed the path of the history. We were there walking around the palace where the first Soviet held his office there. St. Petersburg was the capital of Russia from the 17th to the 19th, the 18th century and the 20th century. And during the Great War, we went there only for a couple of hours, 3 to 4 hours, and we were at the Hermitage Museum and the Snow Palace, the Winter Palace, and where Francisco Miranda was received on several occasions, and at the museum, the Hermitage Museum, where the great Catherine II held a dinner, a goodbye dinner, when Francisco Miranda left. It was due to left the country, and he was approved to use the uniform, and he wrote a passport with a letter to provide orders for all the ambassadors that Russia they had throughout Europe, for them to support the struggle of Francisco Miranda. There are 490,000 remains of human bodies at this cemetery. 490,000. who died of hunger, of starvation and cold. From 3 million inhabitants that Leningrad had, over 400, almost 500,000 inhabitants died due to starvation and cold. The resistance of that people is unique and gave an example to the world of how you can survive to blockades, and they came out of that Leningrad and to take Berlin. This is what the younger generations must study, and also this is what any attempts to reborn fascism may receive the same failure. It is a unique place. We knew the experiences that we need to search for ways to share these experiences, all of these experiences, of how they managed to build their arms during amid the war, when they were attacked by over 5 million soldiers, 5,000 airplanes with the highest technology of the era that were superior to any other country of the world. They took Polonia, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, Austria in a matter of hours, and those were countries that had a strong army at the moment, but they couldn't defeat at the moment, and at a very high cost. I think that they lived the first experience of war of the whole people, because it was the people who organized themselves to face this terror. Well, you only need to get to know the story and the history for this not to repeat itself again. The experience of the Nazi supremacists who threat the peoples and who believe they are superior, and they accumulate hatred and a revenge desire against the peoples. In the case of the Soviet Union, they had accomplices of the Nazis who were at Kyiv, Ukraine. A man who was named Bandera, Nazi. He was a Nazi criminal torturer, racist, supremacist, and against Jewish people. And now is the symbol of Zelensky, the president, the de facto president of Ukraine. However, there is Macron willing and going there to Ukraine to hug Zelensky. Looks like the experience of bending the knee for the Nazis. They do the same. They did the same now that they did during the World War II. That they bend the knee to Nazism. We held a work meeting. We were at the fortress of St. Peter in Sao Paulo, where there are all the SARs of the country. We also saluted the people of St. Petersburg, and at noon we participated in the launching of the canyon of that hour. There were many people gathered there, tourist nationals. We share an emotional moment because the Russian people recognizes me whenever I walk around. As you know, do you know, Ernesto, from who I get the most emotional reactions? From children, Russian children. You saw that at social networks, but at the cathedral, the historical cathedral of St. Petersburg, where the remains of all the Tsars of the country lay, their children, kids, were so much joyful with this emotional reaction, hugging, taking pictures. We also went to the cathedral, Sanisab Cathedral, which is magnificent from an architecture perspective, very impressive. So in St. Petersburg, we reached agreements with the governor of St. Petersburg, who was also in constant contact with President Putin, who also loves his city. We also reached agreements on aerial connections, tourism. We share a group of experiences in the cultural field, also opened social cultural world of St. Petersburg to painters, authors, to boost cultural tourism in that city. We would love to have several days and long hours to explain all the sensations we had and the great achievements we had, because we are going to build bonds of friendship and agreements to keep uniting in action with our brothers of the world and keep moving forward in a joint plan to make Venezuela a respectful, a dignified, a loving country, supported like is today Venezuela in the world, respected, loved, and worshipped. I always said the phrase of Gervasio Artiga, may not wait for anything to come either from us. Or that Bolivar phrase, 10 days away from the Carabobo fight, may not deposit our lucky to Spain, may guarantee our success with our own effort. And that is so true. Venezuela is what it is because of our strength and effort. I have good news, because I want to ratify that it is not just because of our efforts, because we have the world, the support of the world largest and most powerful powers of the world, of Russia, China, and all emerging, developing countries of the world that we met in Moscow. It has been a success. Total success. I have a picture here with me. I was gifted with this photo during the Olympics of Russia in 1980. The Venezuelan football selection there in St. Petersburg, July 1980. This was a gift. I think I can recognize that Mendocita, who was the greatest football player. It was not called Vinotinto at the moment. This is the Venezuelan football selection that participated in the 1980s Olympics of Russia in St. Petersburg. And then I was gifted with this photo that says, visiting the legendary Jose Aurora, famous of the October Revolution. Here it is, the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Venezuela, the glorious PSB, Jesus Farias, during a meeting of May 1st, 1970 in Leningrad. Jesus Farias, boys. I think your father must be there also, must have been there. My old man was there, and I was born. My mom was giving birth to me that same year. Let me see, I can see. If I would have known, I would have asked for the other picture. He's hugging there with the PSEV of Leningrad. We need to request another picture of this moment. We need to call him and we need to ask him for the rest of the pictures. I'm going to give this picture to these Faria's son and daughter, who are heir of his greatest achievements, PSUV. What else? I have so much energy, I have so much strength, I have the will to keep creating with and building with our people. I was in constant communication. This is the good things of this era. Through telephones, I can get to know everything that is happening in the country, even if I'm from afar. I was so attentive to everything, winning the battle of everyday battle from whenever we are, from Moscow, St. Petersburg, Caracas. Our destiny is one: to prevail, to prevail, to prevail. Let's see Digital Zone. Welcome. Thank you very much. Let's go immediately to review the news in matters of economic areas. Let's begin in Venezuela. It was a marvelous journey in this simulacral electoral test that happened this weekend during Sunday. I received an inform in real time, and once I arrived at the highest command to receive the information and to make decisions in real time. And this test is being held for the very first time on Saturday, and it was a success, a profound success, because of the level of participation that broke records of these tests, of this idea. It is a high motivation in the region, because the electoral campaign has been developing at a great level, at a great participation. And it's impressive. 54 political parties, besides including the regional leaders. There are 4 or 5 candidates for each state, over 6 candidates if you add all the candidates of the National Assembly and legislative councils. And the campaign has been increasing in interest. I'm very sure that seeing these test results of this electoral process that is going to be held on May 25th is going to be very good. You may choose governors from all states, which is the authority that is next to the people, and you also choose the legislative councils, the lawmakers that are going to be involved in the basis of the society, which is crucial. I say to the people, if you want peace, stability, recovery and progress and welfare for the next 5 years, you need to think very much what your vote in the National Assembly is going to be. If you are willing to see you again, Julio Borges, for example. Look what happened in 2015. We need to stay tuned, to stay aware, and I believe and I am very confident on the people's election. I think this debate is very good because it proves how vital is the constitutional health. It is a constitutional health, is vitality, that as more independence, more peace we will achieve. Well, President, we keep reviewing